The other format of LOPA is the implicit, and whereas the explicit explicitly uses numerical risk tolerance criteria, in an implicit LOPA, the risk tolerance criteria are implied in the structure of the risk tolerance tool, which is generally a matrix. So if I go back here to the risk criteria tab and I show you the matrix, what you're looking at here is the number in each one of these cells. The cell is going to represent the number of orders of magnitude of risk reduction that is required to make the risk of that cell tolerable, which tells us something about how many independent protection layers we're going to need to have to make the risk be tolerable. So for instance, if I had a very high consequence and a very high likelihood, I would need 5 orders of magnitude of risk reduction to make that risk tolerable, whereas if I had a low consequence and a very low likelihood, I would only need 1 order of magnitude of risk reduction to make that situation tolerable. So if I go back into my LOPA worksheets, or my PHA worksheet, you'll see that I have marked yes, that a LOPA is required for this scenario. So when I go into the LOPA worksheets, it's going to show up. And this scenario is going to be almost identical to the one that we just discussed for the explicit LOPA, but we're going to use an implicit LOPA instead. So same deviation, same consequence category. But in this case, the cause is not quantified using a frequency, it's quantified using a likelihood category. In this case, we used a medium, which is going to be representative of 1 in 10 chance per year, roughly. But instead of explicitly stating it, it's just a row and a column in the matrix or in the risk tolerance criteria. So once I know that for this initiating event, the consequence is high and the likelihood is medium, that will tell me, and let me work over here to delete some things out to make it a little bit more visible. Bear with me for a second. Okay, so if I take those LOPA credits out, you'd see that this scenario requires 3 orders of magnitude of risk reduction. And again, where did that come from? I go to the risk tolerance criteria and I see a consequence of high and a likelihood of medium landing in this cell, which requires 3 orders of magnitude of risk reduction. Okay, so that's where the 3 came from, and then we list out our IPLs the same way we would in an implicit LOPA, or an explicit LOPA. IPL description, tag number, credits, types, so on. But in this case, instead of giving the IPL a probability of failure on demand, we're going to say how many credits does it get, or how many orders of magnitude of risk reduction does it achieve. So if your probability of failure is 0.1, that means you provide 1 order of magnitude of risk reduction. If your probability of failure is 0.01, then you provide 2 orders of magnitude of risk reduction. You can kind of think of it as working with the exponents as opposed to working with the numbers themselves. So in this case, we're going to give 2 credits to the relief valve. And then we see we still have a gap of 1, which means we need 1 more order of magnitude of risk reduction. So let's just go ahead and assign that to the safety instrumented function, making it a SIL1 safety function. That gives us a gap of 0, which means that with these 2 safeguards at those credit levels, those performance levels, tolerable risk will be achieved. So this is the methodology that you would use for the implicit version of the LOPA.